All right, good morning, everyone. I hope the audio is fine, so you can hear me perfectly. So, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm super excited about the session in the morning here at Product Management Festival. I'm mainly excited about that because, from my experience, OKR is a framework which is polarizing the product community unlike anything else, at least for the last couple of months or years from my experience, which at least makes for some very fun discussions along the way. So this is what I hope to get out of that, or hope to create for this talk, during this talk as well. Now, in order to get a quick understanding of what your personal relationship is with OKR, I would like you to raise your hand if you are currently working with OKR from an in-house role, client role, whatever that might be. Okay, that's a fair share of hands going up. Cool. Now, I want to ask you to only raise your hand if you feel like OKR is a truly effective tool helping you to get the job done better, or helps your company to truly move forward in the right way. Like, who's satisfied with that? Okay, fewer hands going up. Now, this gap is also, I would say, a reflection from what you can see out there when it comes to companies adopting OKR. Now, the big question is this. If so many companies are adopting OKR, yet so few are very satisfied with the way it works for them, why do companies still try or continue to implement a framework like this? So from my perspective, the answer is actually quite simple, because most companies are facing a specific challenge they try to solve with OKR. So they're trying to face the challenge of connecting the high-level vision, mission, strategy, whatever you want to call it, with really the day-to-day, sorry for the hiccup with the clicker, so you will see me clicking multiple times without anything changing right now, with the day-to-day tactics of really getting the job done, which is most of the time what keeps product teams very busy. So drawing this connection is an incredible challenge. And most companies are looking at OKR, helping them to do exactly that, connecting these two elements by using a framework, using OKR as a framework or as a lens to do just that. Now, before we move any further, I would like to also establish a shared understanding of what OKR actually stands for, beyond objectives and key results. Because you can observe a lot of different interpretations of what that actually means and how this translates into your daily work. So what I see in most companies is that they treat the objective really just as this big number which secures the end of the year bonus for an executive. And you can observe that key results are then just treated as basically all the KPIs you're tracking anyways, just with a really high ambition level so the team have a stretch goal to aim at, right? But in this talk, I want to advocate for a different perspective on what objectives and key results can mean for your organization. I want to advocate for a perspective which sees the objective really as the inspiring description of your very next step towards your company's vision, and sees the key result as 2 to 5 holistic measurement criteria to achieve just that. So this will be the underlying message here I hope to achieve in this talk, changing your perspective. Besides this gap in understanding of what objectives and key results stands for, there's also quite a bit of a, I would say, misunderstanding of companies who are not using OKR yet of how it might feel using OKR. I believe that most companies see OKR from the outside as something like this super flashy piece of clothing all your cool friends are wearing, which you see all over Instagram. But let me tell you from my own experience that the actual experience of using OKR, especially in the beginning, feels a bit more like this. This sweater you got a couple of Christmases ago from your grandmother, which starts out to feel a bit itchy and doesn't really fit that well. But turns out the longer you wear this sweater from your grandmother, the warmer it keeps you, the better it adjusts to your body composition, and the more comfortable it ultimately feels. But of course, I'm not here to talk about sweaters or differences in sweaters to you. We're here to talk about OKR. And I want to do that by telling you my personal story of getting to know OKR and implementing it in various situations. So we're going to use that as a lens to tell you of how you could also use OKR and how an evolution of implementing OKR might look like. And so I'm going to tell you this journey by using a fictional company example we're going to call Analytico. And Analytico will really be the summary of a couple of years and teams and companies I work with and for implementing various ways of OKR. So to give you a bit of context, Analytico is an analytics startup in the B2B space selling a suite of analytics tools to SMBs and enterprise companies. A bit more context around them is that they are currently employing around 70 people throughout various departments, units, and teams. And of course, Analytico has been founded by a set of people. It has been founded by a set of 3 very smart people which are, surprise, which are obviously very good at what they're doing. And even though the company is doing very well, a couple of concerns are coming back to top of their head over and over again. And one day, these concerns manifest in three very specific ways. The one main concern is that would they be able to bounce back from a couple of quarters of bad performance if the business results would go down? Would they also be able to really continue towards their goals in a very focused way without many distractions, keeping course? And are they actually able to somehow improve collaboration across units, teams, and departments? So those are the main concerns of the founders, which really come to life at one day. Naturally, of course, they arrive at the conclusion that OKR must be the one final solution for all of these problems. So they decide to implement it in their company, which means they, of course, start doing some research and understanding what OKR is about and how to implement it. And they do that by watching a specific video, which most of you have probably also viewed, and it's commonly referred to as the Google video on OKR. So I think it's from 2011 or 2012, and a Google employee walks our audience through the way Google has been implementing OKR. And here are a couple of key takeaways the founders of Analytico take from this video. First, Google is really focusing on performance-driven OKR in their system. Second, they are working with hierarchical cascades, bringing the tool on the goals from top down to the bottom of the organization. And they only work with 1 to 2 check-ins throughout the quarter to see if they are still on track and to course correct. So those are the main key takeaways Analytico founders take from this video, which is a very common resource to getting started with OKR. Now, this of course then manifests in a specific plan of how they want to implement OKR. First, they just want to go on a leadership offsite where they, the three of them, will define one company OKR to use. But of course, they don't want to distract all the teams with this big OKR process and all the things attached to it. So they will just hand them this one goal and hope that they don't get distracted from doing the actual work. Because ultimately, they just want to lean back and see the team succeed then at the end of Q1 with this one great OKR they have defined at their offsite. Let's take a look how Q1 worked. So the leadership team came back from the offsite, and during an all hands of the whole company, they communicated the company OKR for the first quarter. As an objective, they said, we want to have 100 new customers. Right? Pretty simple, straightforward. And they say, this is true, we know that this is true when we achieve 3 key results. On the one hand, we're able to increase our sign-up conversion rate. We are also able to provide a landing page for agency customers. And we're able to launch 5 new features specifically aimed at data scientists. This is the OKR they've been coming up with. They hand it to the teams. Let's take a look at what the teams think of this OKR. What are some concerns which are manifesting in the organization? People are starting to think, wait, why wasn't I really asked for my input on what a proper OKR would be for the company? Don't I have an opinion as well? Don't I have expertise? People are also wondering, well, where's this arbitrary number on the objective level coming from? Why do we suddenly have 100 customers? I don't get that. And they're asking themselves, look, what does this actually mean for me and my team? They can't translate it to the day-to-day actions. So if we unpack these concerns and thoughts, you can summarize them in a set of anti-patterns when it comes to adopting OKR. First, the goals really have been just passed from top to bottom from the leadership team, which defined the set of OKR on their own. Second, you could say that the goals seemed quite artificial and hard to understand for the teams and hard to take care of, right? And of course, the goals didn't really provide tangible guiding for teams. And last but not least, all the key results were really just performance-focused and had a very one-sided perspective on what it means to truly build a product. Now, with all these anti-patterns in mind, you could say that either Analytico would continue to push through these concerns, trying to get the company to adopt the specific Google system they had developed, or they would just drop OKR. But instead, they did something different. When Q2 came along, they adjusted the process. They adjusted the process in a way that they said, look, we're now going to start the company OKR with a truly inspiring objective instead of giving you just a random number. We're going to create department-level OKR, which will be developed by the teams, not by us as the founders. And we're going to focus on outcomes instead of outputs to putting them in the key results to make sure people have truly the space to really just discover the right solution. And this manifests in a set of measures they're implementing in their organization. They're saying, we're going to appoint OKR masters throughout the organization, which will facilitate the OKR process bottom up as part of the team. They're also implementing the concept of a theme-based roadmap, moving away from time-based Gantt chart roadmaps, leaving the teams with enough space to explore a theme. And they're trying to make sure to connect the company OKR truly to the company's vision, mission, and strategy, so it's more clear where something's coming from. Here's an example how the product OKR, or an OKR for the product team then looked like based on these adjustments. They said, our objective is to make people want to upgrade from our free trial product, something which is truly qualitative and might even be inspiring for the team. They say, we know this is true when every trial user uses at least 5 paid features during this quarter, during this period. We know that this is true if we are able to convert 30 trial users directly to a paid plan, which is really aimed at the performance component here. And they say, we also want to make sure that the current trial to paid conversion rate is shared in at least 100% of our team review meetings, which doesn't have that much to do with building the product, but more about changing the culture and the way metrics are handled in your company, which really caters to the idea of having truly holistic key results. Now, this was one key result for the product team, one key OKR. Unfortunately, there were more. The product team ended up with a total of 6 OKR for this quarter. Marketing at 7, sales at 5, and engineering beat them all by having 8. So you could see that they adopted OKR in a way which goes a bit like this. So the more the better, right? More OKR for everyone, because this will help us achieve our goals. Now, what did people think of this approach? Again, looking to the heads of the employees, of the teams who are doing the actual work. They were saying, okay, now everyone's busy, but nothing actually gets done. They were also thinking about, why do teams have conflicting goals, and why are we not able to resolve those? And how do we know we're on track along the way if we only check in at the end of the quarter trying to measure ourselves? Again, you could summarize some of these concerns in some anti-patterns when it comes to OKR after those adjustments. On the one hand, you could say silo OKRs simply lead to misalignment between business units and teams. You could say that this company clearly confused OKR with setting KPIs and just exchanged that and really looked at all the KPIs they were tracking anyways. And they didn't have regular check-ins, which really left no room to course correct for the teams throughout the quarter. Q3 came along. And again, Analytico didn't just push through on the existing idea of OKR. They adjusted their process. They wanted to continue using it. They wanted to make it work for their company and moved away from the original Google approach they started with. So in Q3, they adjusted the process in the way that they said, okay, now we're going to say that cross-functional OKR definitions happens around themes and not just teams or departments. We're also going to encourage that every team focuses on a maximum set of 3 OKR per team, so we can really focus on the most important aspects. And we're going to establish a weekly check-in process so people can come together, discuss where they are, discuss their actions, and look at the alignment between those actions. And some of the measures manifest in a simple check-in format like this, right? Where you just come together once per week, look at the objective, look at the individual key results, look at the grading, the confidence. What are you doing this week and what will you do in the next 4 weeks to truly make sure you align your actions with other teams and departments working on shared OKR or another OKR? And this really shouldn't be more than just a 30-minute weekly effort where you come together and informally go through the set of the OKR. Now here's how those changes and adjustments manifested in an OKR for the theme around existing clients. So we no longer have OKR for specific teams, but we do it around themes. And the objective said that we want to make sure that existing customers love us. Right? This is what they were aiming for. This is what this initiative wanted to achieve. And they would measure success here by looking at having 0 critical bugs for all the enterprise clients already signed up. They were looking at every shipped feature gets at least used once to ensure that you're not just focusing on shipping output, but also following through on the distribution and the usage of an actual feature, and making sure that the customer feedback they were able to collect is at least on the rate of excellent, which is something you can track continuously, which is important for a truly outcome-oriented OKR, that you can track it continuously and not just once at the end of the quarter. Now, what do people think of this set of OKR, right? Again, asking the people who do the work. So people were thinking, now we have fewer OKRs, But all the previous topics we used to focus on, they start to suffer. We become sloppy with things we previously put in focus on. They were also thinking that they were rarely able to truly ship something during the quarter due to some product discovery efforts which typically had to happen before you can start building a solution, which made it incredibly difficult to also achieve an outcome within the quarter. And they were thinking, how does this contribute to my daily work, to the everyday tasks I get done as a team member? How does every single action connect to contributing to the overarching OKR of my team or business unit or the theme? So how you could summarize those anti-patterns? You could say, look, OKR were simply apparently not present in the task management tools of the people, which made it incredibly hard for them to connect their day-to-day actions. You could also see that the rigorous focus on the OKR just for this quarter led to becoming sloppy on previous homework topics like maybe code quality or design consistencies, because they were not present in the OKR anymore. And you could see that product discovery efforts were simply not considered in the OKR process, which made it hard to build the right thing and build it right within the quarter and achieving an outcome. So Q4 came along. Again, Analytico decided to take another iteration, to not just stuck with the OKR process they had, but instead to further customize it based on their needs and their requirements. So in Q4, they adjusted the process in a way like this. They said, now we're going to connect our task management tools to individual OKRs to make sure that every individual contributor can make sure to work on the right things on an everyday basis. They focused on not setting a company OKR any longer. Instead, they completely gave the responsibility to the teams, make sure they had enough strategic education to define their own OKR autonomously and align themselves. They also started to differentiate delivery and discovery OKRs, so teams would focus on both aspects during the quarter and not get caught up in the pure output, on the output focus of shipping things. And they would start to continuously monitor previous focus topics using health metrics to make sure you don't become sloppy or forget things which have previously been worked on. And some of these adjustments result in a set of measures. So on the one hand, they started to connect Jira with the task management, with the OKRs they have. They embraced dual track Agile to be continuously present throughout the quarter, gave people time and the focus area to also work on discovery topics, and they make sure to introduce the concept of health metrics to continuously measure previous focus areas. And here's how this looked like. So they easily added like custom fields to a Jira ticket and said, you should be able to connect every Jira ticket to an existing OKR of the quarter. And then ultimately, you would be able to measure how much of your time is spent on the topics which are really in the focus of your team. And here it's not so much about making this a management dashboard to figure out whether people are working on the right topics. It's meant to be a tool for the people in the teams to see like, are we really working on the right things? Or do we constantly get distracted by bugs or non-OKR topics? And do we maybe have to adjust our OKR along the way? Do we have to revisit our OKR? Do we have to drop the OKR? Or simply do we have to change something in the way we work? And another measure they introduced, as I said, is the idea of the health metric. So they started to set up a health metric, which on the one hand looked at the sales leads they got from social media, which was a previous topic. And on the other hand, they looked at how well they were at still giving teams the freedom to truly define solutions. And they just used a simple traffic light system to check every week, is this good, is this bad, do we have to act on this? And use that as sort of like a accommodating guiding indicator or guiding principle next to the OKR they have been already using. And this is how one OKR resulted from those changes, right? They set up a product discovery OKR for one of the teams during Q4 to make sure teams were not just reporting on the delivery OKR every week, but also making sure that the discovery work became a constant focus for them. So the product of discovery OKR for this one team looked like this, that they said, our users are truly excited about what we're building next. This was the qualitative, inspiring ambition level they set out to achieve. And they would be certain that this would be true if they would be able to run the idea or the theme of an Asana integration through the phases of research, ideation, and validation with the most promising ideas. And on the other hand, they were also looking at testing new research techniques, which would truly enable them to capture the idea of how excited people were about a new idea, because this was something they didn't look at previously. So with all of that in mind, it's easy to guess how Q4 went, right? It was, of course, a blasting success. Everybody got incredibly drunk at the Christmas party due to the success of the OKR system. But now that we looked so much at how the teams felt about the OKR process, the changes they felt were needed, let's revisit how the founders feel about the OKR process. Because ultimately, though, they were the ones starting this whole initiative. So the founders are thinking things like this. What's my role anymore in this setup of teams truly organizing themselves, setting their own goals and following up on their goals? They were also thinking, why is it that I never had such a good overview of where the company was going without any overblown KPI dashboards being set up? And they were starting to worry about this idea, how can I not be involved anymore in the technical day-to-day work now that the teams are truly defining their own goals and their own path, and my hands-on expertise is no longer needed, right? So a constant struggle for the founders. And these concerns result from the evolution we were able to observe of OKR being used in this company. Because even though it started out as something which is very performance-oriented, right? This was the main goal for the founders, to make sure they had a high-performance team. Over time, the OKR system resulted in a better focus on outcomes. They enabled teams to become outcome-oriented through the adjustment of the OKR process. And ultimately, they were even able to support some first nuances or ideas of self-organization. This is the result of the evolution the OKR system took at Analytico. Now, of course, the big question is this. With all of these things in mind, and these individual things, how do you then set OKR correctly or right? Unfortunately, I can only give you everybody's favorite product manager's answers to that, which is, it depends. And the reason it depends is really that OKR is not a one-size-fits-all system just because it has been working at Google. Because if you think back of the idea of picking a sweater which might seem a bit less hype in the beginning, it's also about picking the right sweater to put on. It's not so much about putting on Google's sweater and trying to make Google's OKR system work for your company, because most of you in here are not working at Google and your company has different needs or requirements. It's also not about adjusting or adopting the OKR process from the small startup your fellow college roommate has founded, because this is also a different scenario. It's about finding your own size and putting on your own sweater, making sure you come up with an OKR process which works for your company, meets your requirements, and works for your employees, picking the right size. Because even though we as product managers always love to keep in mind how easy it can be to implement a new framework, there are 3 things I want you to take away from this keynote. First, see other companies really more as an inspiration instead of a rigid template to follow when it comes to implementing a process like OKR. Second, really just get started with implementing your OKR instead of trying to get it right from the very beginning. With the team I work with, I once lost a full quarter because I thought we didn't have all the templates set up correctly and couldn't start learning how OKR would have to adjust to our organization. And of course, stay open about how OKR can change your organization. Just as it happened with Analytico, it can change things in your organization as a byproduct of constantly revisiting and adjusting it. And I know that all of us as product teams love the upper right of a good 2x2 metrics and are constantly looking for the hockey stick when it comes to moving metrics and adopting frameworks. And this could be an ideal learning curve, learning something new and adopting a framework like OKR. But let me tell you that the actual learning curve will look much more like this. Your progress and your positive experiences with OKR will go sideways, maybe upwards, maybe downwards, and it will take a lot of work, adjustment, and commitment from yourself to end up at the upper right ultimately. And so this is really the big idea I want to leave you with. When it comes to adopting OKR, don't just try to perfect the process from another company. Really embrace the change and the work it is required to change a process like that and a framework like that. Do the bottom-up work to make it work for your team, for your company, for your culture, your incentive systems, your strategy, all the different aspects your company includes. And embrace this journey and put in the work so you can ultimately make it your framework and not just someone else's. Thanks so much.